as a biohacker myself, I wonder, what are the standards for fitness? Are they basically, non-negotiable time at the gym, or are you measuring different health markers in your life that are meeting those standards?
Yeah, great question. We could probably do a whole day on this. Again, I don't think there's any one way to be successful. I think the key here again is finding out what works best for you by testing and retesting and going through the frameworks and methodologies and things that I've developed and you've developed, and then honing in on what works best for you.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I am your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's podcast, I introduce you to a very good friend of mine, someone that I've met throughout my road as being a keynote speaker. He speaks all over the world as well. And we actually developed a friendship right at the gym. It was 6 a.m. in the morning. I have seen him before in various capacities, but it was our first time connecting. And you're deeply connected when you meet someone that has very similar values. And both of us had a 8 a.m. conference we were attending together, and both of us were at the gym. Now, on today's podcast, I myself don't enjoy going to the gym, or maybe I should rewrite that story, but it's something that I've committed to, something I put focus on. And the more you focus on something, the more it grows. Many of you who have been listening now remember the story of my life where I was a overworked doctor, was overweight, diabetic, had high blood pressure because I wasn't conscious and I was making unconscious decisions. I was focused on probably the wrong things in my life, and that focus not only created disease in my body, but destroyed my relationships and my career at that time. But then there's a true awakening, and I believe so many of us are going through a very similar journey of recognizing potentially we've been living life through a lens that was given to us. Maybe the rules, the values, the teachings of our parents, of our teachers, and forgetting that we are a human soul here in this human body to do some things that light us up. And it's really reclaiming the focus, reclaiming our life, that we could truly make a difference in our health, in our relationships, and our business. So on today's podcast, we deliver just that. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great ride. But before we get into the conversation, let me introduce all the newcomers to the Thrive State Podcast. Hey, if you haven't met me before, Dr. V here. I really bring in the thought leaders and experts in spirituality and ancient wisdom, combining them with experts from cutting edge technologies and the latest and greatest in biohacking and longevity, here to give you the tools to maybe redefine the rules you were living life through and give you new choices, because new choices lead to new actions, which leads to transformation in your life. And if you are joining us for the first time, if you're just entering our world and just want to know where to start, let me give you some free resources on performance and longevity. You can go to thrivestatestarter.com, where I deliver breathwork exercises for performance, as well as a lot of key insights in the performance and longevity world. And also, if you want to just stay on track with the most important things that are going to make revolutionary changes in your life, pick up my toolkit absolutely free at mythriveState.com/toolkit. And certainly, and if you haven't already, pick up my book at thrivestatebook.com. That's the book where I open your eyes and your mind to the possibility that we are bioenergetic beings, and from our conscious choices, we could rewrite our biology, rewrite the success that we have in our relationships and our business. Again, thrivestatebook.com. Now, on to today's podcast. I want to introduce you to a very good friend of mine, Gary Scheinman. Gary Scheinman is actually the founder of the Midlife Male. Now, whether or not you are a man listening to this podcast or a woman with men in your life, this podcast is going to be helpful for you. Actually, anyone listening to this is really an opportunity to discuss where in life are we asleep and where can we start to wake up and make some focused, intentional choices that will bring more health, more vitality, and better loving relationships and more performance in our business. Again, I mentioned on the top of the show, unconscious choices. If we are unconscious with what we choose in life, we are unconscious in the choices we make in life. We are actually operating from a very primitive part of our brain and nervous system called the default mode network. This is the autopilot survival mode of the brain. So every time we react, every time we are unconscious, we are operating from that space. That space usually contains a lot of negative thoughts. That space usually has all the inner critic, negative self-talk that we go through. That space is probably what holds us back from health, happiness, and human potential. So if you happen to be in a place in life where you feel stuck, where you feel like you don't have your optimal health, you're not performing at your best, or your relationships aren't working out, this podcast is for you, because here and basically all of my content is truly about waking up to the old unconscious programs that we all have, and being able to choose consciously, choose with attention and intention on the life that we want to live and breathe day in and day out. So my friend Greg is actually a serial entrepreneur. He's a podcast host and wellness advocate who's experienced his own awakening at the age of 47. After building and selling multiple businesses, he realized that success was not just about the bottom line. Now, Greg is on a mission to radically transform the lives of men through his rapidly growing community, the Midlife Male Inner Circle. He has 6 focuses, 6 F's that you should be aware of: family, fitness, finance, food, fashion, and fun. So what are you focusing on? After today's podcast, you'll understand why focus is so important and why focus will dramatically change the results in your life and the life that you live. He is redefining what it means to thrive in your 40s and beyond, and his unique blend of business acumen and personal growth expertise and made him a sought-after speaker and coach for men looking to level up in all areas of life. So if you are a man or a woman, I think the concepts on this podcast will serve you well. Ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this conversation with my good friend, Greg Scheinman. Greg Scheinman, welcome to the Thrive State Podcast, brother.
It is good to see you, my friend. Thank you for having me. You're looking sharp.
Oh, thank you so much. You are someone I knew was a kindred spirit when we were both at an event where we wanted to up-level ourselves. And who do I find in the gym at 6 a.m. in the morning, putting in the work to get themselves to the next level?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was great to walk in and see you. You know what we've talked about a number of times is, who are you looking towards for inspiration? Who's out there not just talking the talk, but walking the walk? And when you've got an 8 a.m. start time for the event and you walk in the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know very quickly, okay, who your guys are.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we dive into everything that we know so many people are going to take out of this podcast, I have a portion of the show called the 5 to Thrive. This is really my opportunity to give you a free meal on me by winning the prize of the 5 to Thrive. So 1,000 points each, 5 quick questions, rapid fire. Greg Scheinman, are you ready to play?
I am ready to play.
Question number 1 is, what did you dream of being as a child?
Film producer.
Ooh. Question number 2, what one book, quote, or phrase entered your life and completely turned it around?
Vivid Vision was the book by Cameron Herold. Mediocrity happens by default. Maximization happens by design.
Ooh, being conscious of our choices. Question number 3 is, if I were to hand you a mic in front of 100,000 people to sing a karaoke song, which song would that be?
Keep Me in Your Heart for a While by Warren Zevon.
Ooh, question number 4 is, what is one potential cheat, if you will, or one potential luxury thing that you think you might not be doing, but it's like either a snack that you're like, oh, it's too indulgent, even though it might be bad for you?
Tiramisu.
Okay. And question number 5, how does Greg Scheinman want to be remembered?
Relatable, credible, aspirational.
Beautiful. 5,000 points, which means a healthy meal on me the next time we meet. And congratulations, I know your son just got into Loyola Marymount, and you'll be in LA a lot, which means lots of opportunities for you to collect your prize.
And I'm going to need it with what that school costs. So I'm going to be spending the night at your place too a few times and raid your fridge.
Hey, it is open for you, brother. It is open for you. I'm really excited for this conversation because I would probably say I am still in the process of arriving. I consider myself to be a midlife male, but I would probably say 10 years ago, I had to relook at where life was taking me. I was this hustling physician, overweight, diabetic, high blood pressure on prescription medications, and just recognizing that the life I was living wasn't really a conscious life, and it didn't feel alive to me. So I could truly understand portion in the lives of people, but particularly men, where they have to start waking up. For you, what was that for you? That, what were the life circumstances around your life that made you think, I need to start this new thing called midlife male?
47. And
Mm.
for reference, I'm 52 now. So I found myself at 47 having accomplished a lot of what I had wanted to accomplish and do, or thought I wanted to accomplish and do, should have done. I have a beautiful family, the wife, two incredible boys, had career success, as a partner in a big firm at that point in time of my life. And I had chased all of that. And despite other situations and circumstances throughout the first 47 years of my life, I arrived at 47 years old. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, I think about it all the time. I'm sitting in the parking lot of my office building, the reserved parking spot that all the partners have. I'm in the fancy car. I have all the trappings of success, the multi-million-dollar book of business, the equity in the firm, the private school tuitions, all the other stuff that's there. And it's my 10-year anniversary with them. And I'm at the same age as when my dad passed away. And I'm looking at this going, is this it? Can't get out of the car. I'm having this anxiety, panic attack that this is what my life is going to look like. This is the best it's ever going to look, the best it's ever going to feel, the best I'm ever going to do. And it's not that great. I had fallen into conformity, complacency, redundancy. I wasn't particularly healthy, kind of looked healthy. Everything kind of looked the part, if you will. Looked good, quite frankly, from the outside looking in. But it really didn't feel it. And that was the time that I said, okay, I can either squander the opportunities that I have, or I can take a good, hard, long look in the mirror and think about what I want to do to change and pour some rocket fuel on what the next phase of my life looks like. Because now I'm in bonus time. I'm here a day longer than my dad was. Let's not mess this up any longer. And that was the time. Now, was it that 1 minute, that one day, that I think was the tipping point, right there? Like Malcolm Gladwell says, I was the tipping point, but it was really a series of situations, circumstances, experiences over 5, 10, 15, 20 years that led to that. And at a certain point, you either get to that spot, or you just resign yourself to like never really getting to that spot and doing something about it. You just keep going on the way things were.
As you were talking about that experience, a couple of words shot out, and a very similar experience in my life. The two words that shot out were, I did everything I should be doing to create this life where things look good on the outside, that should word. And the other word was chase. Something in you had to go chase something else. And those two words were, I resonate with, because I thought I was doing everything I should be doing to create a life that was happy. I was chasing higher ranks at the hospital. I was chasing the fancy house, the fancy car, which only led me to disease, which reminds me of a quote that was shared by the Dalai Lama when he was asked what he found most interesting about humanity. He said, man, because he would sacrifice his health in order to make money and sacrifice his money to recuperate his health. And I realized after doing a lot of deep inner work that so much of that stemmed from a wound of worthiness, of not being worthy, of not feeling like to be a man, I needed to succeed externally. And I wonder if any of that resonates with your journey as well.
It does. I mean, as you started off telling your initial story that led into the first question, I just nod along and go, okay, been there, seen the movie, seen different endings to the movie, like those choose your own adventure books that we used to read when we grew up. You could go this way or this way.
Yeah.
And I believe that it's all a choice. And I hear these stories from men now from all over the world at various even ages and stages of where they're hitting these moments, where they're realizing that maybe they are chasing and they're pushing, and that this chasing of authenticity where it doesn't exist leaves them feeling exhausted rather than energized. That this push for salary and title, if you will, and the societal metrics of success don't leave them content or truly feeling fulfilled. And that all these things come at a cost.
Yeah.
And that if we're going to chase anything, Maybe we should be chasing total life wellness. Maybe we should be chasing low friction living. Maybe we should chasing some of the things that you even talk about and I talk about and why we get along so well. How do we show up better as husbands, fathers, providers, not just monetarily, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and men, and how we want to look at that in the big picture and this portfolio that I think we're trying to really create for ourselves that has this harmony to it rather than this imbalance of over-indexing in these traps that we fall into under the auspice of doing what we're supposed to do, doing what we think we have to do, rather than viewing it through that lens of what we get to do.
Beautiful. I mean, I really hear a profound sense of gratitude, as you say, doing the things we get to do. I know for me, that transition of going from how I used to be living to, and it's constantly evolving, and I catch myself doing this as well, can be a little messy. I know you've gone through the process and you really have audited down the 6 areas of life that you find people could audit themselves and improve on every single day. But I'd love for you to maybe share how it looked like for you. Once you had made that decision once you got to that tipping point, was it like gung ho? Wow, I'm chasing this area of life and every day is going to look like this. I know for me, I was doing that. And what I was doing was attending personal development seminars and trying some new things or actions. But I would also catch myself going, well, you know what? Now I'm not making the same amount of money that I'm living in. I sold my house to invest in myself, and I'm in this house that I grew up, I'm basically in my parents' house. Yeah, there was these thoughts that were just telling me, you're not winning right now. And it took, this incubation period for me to really allow myself to step into a more, I would say, heightened version of myself. And I wonder what that transition is like for you and how men could maybe expect what it looks like when they make a decision to change.
Sure. There's so much here to unpack because you opened up this box now. And it's an amazing box. It really is. I think it's an amazing box. And what's really, really cool about it is that I see it as a box of possibility. It is this open possibility of what your life can become and what you can become. Where I focus and where I really get in there, straight down the middle, no BS. I'm a simpleton, man. I haven't read anything that Dalai Lama said, really. Like, I don't go to a lot of that stuff. Like, I'll tell you, like, I go right down the middle in terms of what and who, and most importantly, how I think I can make some improvements. And I think a lot of guys know why they want to do these things, why they want to be better husbands, why they want to be in better shape, why they want to make more money. Where they struggle, Doc, is they struggle on the how. And they go out again and they make some of the same mistakes like they did before in the chase. I got to join that mastermind. I got to go read all these books. I got to listen to all of these podcasts. I got to invest, if you will, spend, basically. I got to go consume. I got to go after it. And what they find is it's a lot of output, time, energy, money, everything. And they jump after it quickly because they want to make these changes and they want that instant gratification. And they mistake busyness with productivity. But I'm everywhere. I'm supposed to be again. I'm learning from this guy and that guy and the best and the brightest. And they don't stop and take a beat and really think about what they really want and what are the right steps to go about doing it. And we underestimate what we can do in a year and we overestimate what we can do in a day. And the cycle perpetuates. So where I'm going with this is to emphasize on the how. And rule number one is knowing what's important is what's most important. You get into this process. For me, that became my 6 Fs. Family, fitness, finance, food, fashion, fun. These were things that I was really interested in, and I wasn't doing all that well in them. So what I did is I looked to guys that I thought were doing better than me in these areas, that had experience, but also, as I touched on before, that I thought were relatable and that were credible and that they were aspirational in regards that they were further down the road than I was in these areas. But somehow they're doing it. They're doing it because they've got jobs and careers. And they're thriving, if you will, seemingly thriving. And they're in good shape. And they've got mortgages and tuitions and all these other things that I have. They just seem to be doing a better job with all those things. I went to those guys, and I was fortunate to have a pretty good, solid, personal and professional network, over 30 years of business and entrepreneurship and life. And I started tapping into those guys and talking and interviewing those guys. And then I would apply what I was hearing from them. I called it my ACE principle. I would aggregate from all these things these guys were telling me. Could be, a Troy Aikman on his greatest failures in life. It could be a Bob Harper from The Biggest Loser on experiencing, a heart attack and rebuilding and transforming himself. Grammy-winning songwriter Billy Mann about chasing the hit life, not the hit song. And I was aggregating all this information and insight. And then I spent a lot of time curating it down. What are the similarities here? What are all these different guys telling me? I did 250 plus interviews over a 3-year period from 47 to 50. Curating down, what are the similarities? What are these guys really telling me? Testing and retesting it. What's working for me? And then I eliminated the E in this concept. AC, aggregate, curate, and eliminate. Eliminate all the shit that wasn't working, that I couldn't relate to, that I quite frankly didn't want to do. Don't need a 27-step morning routine from this biohacking guru over here. I'm good with 3. And by taking that process on, I started writing about what was happening. Here are the interviews. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what's working. Here's what's not doing, and writing about that and applying it. And from that, I developed a set of standards. Standards, not goals, but standards that I could live by, that I felt good about, that if I looked in the mirror and I held this standard, I would feel pretty good about myself. And then I just started living by those standards. I started putting things on my calendar. I started tightening my circle. I invested in people rather than big, grandiose things. And at that time, experiences and courses. I got a trainer before I bought any gym equipment that I would not use. I got a nutritionist to help me with what my diet and nutrition would look like and what I should put in my body. I started to look at some science and data, not just listening to other influencers or individuals or friends of my wife who would tell me, take this, take that. But what does my blood work say? What does my body really need? What do I need? I went into the basics. I know we've talked a lot about biohacking, but I looked at basics and biohacking. I'm a basics guy. I'm not an over-indexed biohacking. There are elements of that are interesting, but what can I sustain and do well within my life in all of these areas? How did I want to dress? I had a closet filled with tons of expensive stuff, way too many options and choices. What do I want to look like that makes me feel confident, like me, secure? And I started putting those pieces together, and that really became what I dubbed my midlife action plan, my map, which was another one of the rules that were developed. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. You've got to have a map. And I spent years being rudderless without a map, just being very reactive to what, again, I should be doing in all these other things. And it didn't have a purpose, process, and ultimately a payoff. And now that I have that and have been operating off of it, I said, you make the better decision the majority of the time, the majority of your life gets better. That's all that's happened here. Started making some better decisions and better choices every day, living by design, not by default, to a certain standard. And those little tiny micro wins each day stack up. And overall, cumulatively, you experience growth and transformation, not overnight. And I think that's what a lot of people get caught up in. They're looking for a quick fix. They're looking for a shortcut. They're looking to buy this thing, go to this place, and expecting galactic transformation when they leave. And it's not how it works. In fact, it could be one of the most galactically irresponsible things you can do in middle age with all of your other obligations and responsibilities. I would offer do the opposite.
As you were breaking it down there, I found some really awesome frameworks that I think people should zone in on. You've got basically the ACEs framework of what you did to actually see and pull out what people had, and to remind people ACEs stand for aggregate, where you took experts in different areas of life and just took all their information together. 2 is you curated all that information. You've eliminated the stuff that didn't resonate with you, and then you set standards for yourself. The second framework, I heard you talk about was the triple Ps, which was to understand who you are, the type of person you want to be, your purpose. Once you've got that purpose and that guiding star, you then need to create this action plan. When you have that, you'll have the payoff, which was beautiful. I mean, I like these little takeaway nuggets people could walk away with. And I want people to walk away with maybe potentially 1 or 2 things that they can do in those 6 Fs. So if they're feeling a little bit lost, maybe kind of like the greatest bang for your buck that you found in each one of these areas. Starting with family. I recognize it took me a while, and really having my 4-year-old daughter, to truly recognize how much time I'm spending in my head versus being present with her. And it took a few moments where she was playing and then just had to call for daddy that I'm like, oh my God, why am I not really savoring the moments with her? But in terms of you, what have been some of these big actions that you've taken in the family space that you found to be very helpful?
Sure. I'll just give you one quick delta here for everybody out there. My F's don't have to be your F's. So the first thing is identifying what is most important to you and what does success really look like, feel like, and ultimately live like for you. So your F's can be anything they want. They could be more, they could be less than six. I centered around six things that were important to me. Now, what order you put them in, I always speak about them in the same order. So I'm glad you started with family because to me, family is the number one. That is the first one. The main thing, and you touched on it, and I think what's actionable and what's measurable and quantifiable, which is also key, what we schedule gets done, what we can measure, we can quantify, and we can see where we stand. That's how you know you're meeting, beating, or falling under the standard that you've set. So with family, where there's an emotion and there's love and there's tie and there's all this desire and everything, you still got to look at these things. They say, run your life like you run your business. And we don't want underperforming quarter after quarter. We would never accept that professionally. Why would we accept it personally? So we set family standards. I mean, when I did this, I was 47 again. So my kids were a little bit older. For reference, I'm 52 right now, and my boys are 21 and 18. My wife and I have been married for 24 years. But whatever age, stage, gender you're starting this at, I think it starts with communication. And you have to sit down. And what we did is we sat down and we wrote out amongst the four of us what was important to us as a family, how much time we wanted to spend together, the four of us together, how much time even we were going to be spending apart based on what was going on in our lives. Where were both of our boys at in their lives at that time? So, and we started setting standards around certain things, where my wife and I were in our relationship, what my career responsibilities were. And we set standards. So, for example, my younger son is a basketball player, and the standard that we set was I would attend 80% of his games. And that's a measurable and quantifiable number. One, my goal is to attend 100% of his games. Is that realistic? Likely not. But based on our lives, setting a standard of attending 80% of his games over the course of his high school career, I thought was measurable and it was achievable, and I would beat that standard. So a couple of things happen out of this, Kien. By setting a simple standard, a few things happen. One, every game of his is on my calendar. Show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. Schedule around them. Every once in a while, I got to make a choice. Do I take that speaking engagement? Do I do that podcast? Am I traveling for this kind of event or experience? But overall, when you look in the aggregate, I'm going to make 80%. What does he know? He knows when he looks up in the stands, 80% of the time I'm going to be there. But what I also want for him, and he wants this too, is sometimes, man, you got to step up on your own. You got to look up in the stands and go, you know what? My dad's thinking about me. He's got something important to do today. And so do I. I got to be self-reliant. So we built standards around certain things like that. As a family, we set a standard for spending 2 months a year together. Not going to be consecutive because we can't do that these days. But I'll give you another example. We just pulled our son out of high school for a couple of days to join us on a trip to Italy to go visit our older son who's living and studying over there now. And the conversation was, first we weren't going to take him. My wife and I were like, oh, he shouldn't miss school. And he's got there's a basketball game and he's a senior and we shouldn't pull him and so on and so forth. And then when we sat down and looked at the calendar of the entire year, what we realized is it's going to be more difficult for us to hit the standard of the four of us being together cumulatively for 2 months out of the year if we don't take Harper with us for this 10-day trip. And in the overall grand scheme of things, if we pull, what's going to be missed? Where's the real value? And would we get there and regret not having him with us more than anything? So we looked at that and together we made the decision. Is it okay to miss a few days of school? Is it going to hurt your team? Is it going to hurt you? Do you want to actually join us? Here's where we're going. And we made those decisions together. And we're at a stage of our life right now where we can do some of these things. And I will go back and preface that, look, in my 20s and in my 30s, and when there was a lot more hustle and a lot more grind and certain things were going on, you've got to prioritize differently. And we did as a family. But my point with this is set standards that you actually can hit, that work around the framework, if you will, of where your life is at right now. If you're in earnings season, probably not the time to take the vacation. If you are working with a company and you have a certain amount of days, times, vacation, things that are there, work back, reverse engineer back from there, but set measurable, achievable, realistic, quantifiable standards that make you feel proud in each one of these categories. And I would start with family and then back into everything else. And you'll be amazed at how much time there is for all this stuff that you didn't think you had time for.
That's amazing. What I've also heard within what you stated there was really kind of understanding your values and how you prioritize the values so that you can make those decisions when you have to decide, do I have to choose X versus Y, or making a decision to go on the family trip versus work. It's really understanding those values. And when you have those values set and you prioritize those values, then you could always look back at it and say, oh, you know what? This season of my life, this is what I value. It makes those decisions better, easier, faster.
And I love the frame of seasons around that too.
Yeah.
Different seasons of our lives. At different seasons and times of my life, there were different priorities by choice, by necessity, by choice based on necessity and obligation. So you got to look closely at those. And again, you got to be a realist. And again, what we schedule gets done, and what we put down on paper that we can measure, now you're able to evaluate and you're able to grade it based on there. And when we talk about F's, one of the concepts that we talk about at Midlife Male a lot is how do we turn those F's into A's? Not that you need to be a straight A student in every single category, but what's your cumulative GPA overall? That's what we're trying to do. Trying to get a little better in each one of these categories.
Now, I'm super excited to dive into this next one in terms of what your standards might be. As a biohacker myself, I wonder, what are the standards for fitness? Are they basically, non-negotiable time at the gym, or are you measuring different health markers in your life that are meeting those standards?
Yeah, great question. We could probably do a whole day on this. Again, I don't think there's any one way to be successful. I think the key here again is finding out what works best for you by testing and retesting and going through the frameworks and methodologies and things that I've developed and you've developed, and then honing in on what works best for you. I take a really simplistic approach to health and wellness at this point. I want to look good. I want to feel good. I want to perform well. I don't want to major in the minors.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time measuring, tracking, feeling like I'm a statistical benchmark every day, depriving myself of anything. So I look at my standard as I want to be able to say yes to whatever I'm asked to do. I'm not trying to win any particular event. I am trying to win at life. So that looks to me like, how do I move? How do I breathe? How do I recover? How do I feel? I don't own a scale. When I look in the mirror, I go by look and I go by feel and I go by movement assessments. So what I do is I don't have any non-negotiables when it pertains to health and fit wellness. I have standards again. So I do get my blood work done every 90 days because I want to know where I stand and I want to be careful about what I put on and in my body. And I want to know. The reason I get it done every 90 days now, it used to be annual, is because now I am taking things like TRT, NAD+, and some supplementation there. So I want to make sure that I am taking the minimum effective dose and that my body is responding well to that, testing and retesting for that. As far as supplements go, I believe in eating. Eating real clean foods the vast majority of the time. I emphasize 80-20. 80% of the time, I am eating off of my approved foods list. What's on my approved foods list? What's my nutritionist and dietitian have told me. And that's a once a year deal. I meet with them like once a year for kind of a checkup and say, okay, where am I getting my proteins, my vegetables, my fruits? How am I on carbs? What am I responding well and not? And keeping those things around. The other 20% of the time, like I said, we ate tiramisu every day in Italy for 10 days. And that was the season for it. And that was the time.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for ThriveStateStarter.com, because in there, you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You can find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
As far as training goes, I'm all about mixing modalities into things. If it's not fun, then I'm done. I don't want to do it if it's not fun. And yes, is it hard? I find some hard physical things to be a lot of fun. But whether you're into yoga, whether you're into Pilates, it could be running, whatever you're into, again, I think you just lean into that. I believe in strength training. So I lift weights 3 days a week. I design my own programming at this point. I use ChatGPT to help me out a lot. And I want a mixed full body kind of strength and conditioning program that if I'm on the road, I'm not so hyper specialized in any one area that I can't just jump in and do what I'm doing. I enjoy swimming. I enjoy hiking. I enjoy boxing, and I go on feel. I think movement is the key.
Yeah.
Getting and being active every day, that's really the key. And I think if you do that 45, 60 minutes, I'm never at anything for really longer than an hour and a half at any given time. I think if you do that, when you practice that with discipline and preparation and accountability, that's where the consistency comes from. You feel better, you move better, you look better, the aesthetics come from that. I think, again, it's going in the right order. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect. It's got to be the perfect workout program, or it's got to be dialed in, or I can't mix my blueberries and bananas together, and I can't do that, it's all bullshit. Move your body, find things that work for you. Keep it really simple, the basics, the fundamentals. And then if you build on a solid foundation, then you can really expand on it. You want to go a little deeper and look into, but you see too many people jumping, thinking, hey, that's so much information, or I can't do that. So they're paralyzed and they don't do anything. Or they're so, again, over-indexed and they're taking so many pills and supplements a day and working on so that they're losing the real enjoyment in what the purpose of this used to be. I think it's about mastering the middle and figuring out what your middle is. So that's why I just say everything's negotiable. And then I reserve the right to change my mind. And if it stops working or stops energizing me, then I'll shift it. If I start to feel different, look different, perform different, then I'll shift it. I'm about to go into a down cycle. I've got one event this weekend called High Rocks that I'm going to knock out this weekend. And then I'm going to go into a down cycle, take the running back down because it's a lot of pounding, get back into more restorative, a different season, more of a restorative season, ramp up for a little while. And then I've got some stuff June, July that I'm looking at where we'll take it back up again. So that's where the feel and the tempo and cadence comes in.
I love that, and want to let people know, how we build resilience, how we build adaptive capacity, and how our bodies function and every one of our cells function works is you stress it, but you need to give it that time to recover. And so, I like how you talk about season as it pertains to fitness. Now, this next F, I wonder how you approach this with men, because I recognize that I never really had that much financial literacy growing up. Didn't really get it in school, certainly didn't learn it in medical school, and really took me a while to maybe understand, like, number one, where the investment is. And then also the second thing is I was at a point in my life years ago when I was starting to transition, going, my finances have been steady coming from this one income source that didn't light up my life, and I'm making that transition. So tell me, kind of, with your network and the people that you've seen wanting to make big shifts in life, but they're afraid because of maybe where all their income is coming at this point. How do you start to look at maybe making those initial steps to kind of make the change feel more secure and comfortable along the way?
I think it's a great topic. It's a sticky one, particularly in middle age. Again, so if we just isolate, we just stay kind of narrow and deep in middle age, and I think there are different seasons. What you can afford to do maybe in your 20s or when you're single, you don't have as big of an overhead or responsibilities. Maybe in your 30s, everybody's situation is different. But if we're talking kind of about middle age, where most of the guys that I see, they are married or even divorced,
Yep.
and they have kids and they have careers and they have done again well and they have an overhead. There's a train moving down the track and it's pretty hard to stop once it gets moving. So I think there's also you start surrounding that with unhappiness, maybe a little depression creeping in, feeling like there's a lot of, again, noise around I should quit my job and follow my passion, or oh, is there enough time left for me to do this other stuff, or am I stuck here and I can't get out of it? I think that's just like some of the other things that we talked about. Family, like all these things are the same and they're all connected. Family and even fitness. Stop, take a breath, take a step back. Quitting your job to follow your passion at 47 years old with 2 private school tuitions, a house, a mortgage. If you think you're unhappy today, just wait, okay, until that paycheck stops coming in. The benefits get turned on, all those other things. Stop, take a breath, and let's make a plan. Let's think about the standards you want to set for yourself and where you want to go. Again, it doesn't have to happen today, but it's amazing what happens to your mindset, your resilience,
Yeah.
when you have a plan, how you even approach that job that yesterday you couldn't wait to quit and follow your passion. And today, again, you have a purpose, process, and a payoff for how you're going to transition to the next and better phase of your life. It shifts your mindset. It makes you resilient. It gives you some ownership and some self-reliance. So as it pertains to finances, I ask a simple question to a lot of guys too, like, what's the number? What would it take? What don't you have? What do you want? Those are a series of a few very simple questions. You say, Greg, what's your perspective on? I want to have enough money to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, for as long as I want. So what does that mean? If you drew the line down the page, some guys that might mean I want to stay in the St. Regis Hotel. I want to fly private. I need 50 million bucks. I want the house in Aspen. I want this. You can go to somebody else and go, you know what? If I had X in the bank at 6 to 7% compounding interest every year, and I got to start, I got to surf every morning, attend 80+% of my kids' games. I like to grill outside. I like to walk my dog. We've got different costs, like certain things cost different things in life. And you've just got to get real with that. And you go back into what happiness and what success and what fulfillment looks like. And it's not the dollar number. And there's all sorts of statistics around at what number people get incrementally happier or not happy or anything. This gets back to you in there and making responsible, smart decisions. And in order to make smart, responsible decisions, again, you're back to having a plan and thinking about how you want to operate. And that's kind of, I think, the way you look at finance. And I consider it wealth. And wealth is beyond just the dollars. Wealth is really the WELL type wealth. Like, what does real wellness and wealth look like? Because money is just a tool. And there's a lot of glamour around entrepreneurship. There's a lot of glamour even around, and sizzle around stuff that guys like you do, and even the perception of things that I get to do now and then I do. But the truth of the matter is, like, you still got to get up, you got to get dressed, you got to pay bills, you got to figure out what kind of quality of life you want, and you've got to be able to provide that and design the way that you're going to be able to achieve that. And that could be 50 grand a year, that could be 5 million a year. A lot of guys that come to see me, they've won. They don't even know it.
Yeah.
They feel like they're losing because they've never again stopped taking a look and step, hey, what have I even done in the last 5, 10, 15 years? What could I do? Can I afford to do?
Let's dive into that a little bit, because I find, certainly when I had my concierge practice, that theme of already winning, but not knowing it and still chasing something else was very, very prevalent. Are you finding there's a root cause to that, and why we are maybe programmed to chase and not really knowing what we have? And where do you think some of that comes from? And how do you guide people through the process of really, truly recognizing what they truly have and appreciating and that sense of gratitude?
First of all, change is hard. We didn't get to this place overnight. We're not going to get out of it, overnight. So there's a lot of, I think there's ego involved. I think there's identity involved. There is this, again, like I said it before, there's momentum that has built up. There are hard costs associated with this lifestyle that you have gotten yourself into or what you're doing, in there. And it's challenging to unwind it. And just like a lot of us come home at the end of the day and we've worked really, really hard and we're doing everything we want, and we know we should have that conversation with our wife about something like that. And guess what? We don't want to have it because it feels like more work. Feels like more work. I don't want to get into that. It's going to turn into a confrontation, or it's going to be. So what do? We ignore it. We'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it later. I'll reevaluate my life later. I'll have that conversation with my boss later. I'll sit down and I'll look at my finances, and plan out later. I'll get in the gym later. Later's now. That's it. Today's the day you start on all of this. And I think what happens to a lot of guys is that they feel paralyzed and they feel trapped. And I did too. In my case, I have equity here. I have all these clients that rely on me. I have a family and everything that relies on me. I'm supposed to be happy. I don't want to show anybody that I'm not. I can't tell my partners that I'm thinking about a transition plan to get out of here, because as soon as they know that, I'm looked upon differently. I don't want to bring it home and tell my wife about it, and she'll be all scared, of what's going on and what am I doing? And here's my midlife crisis coming around. I'm not going to go buy a motorcycle, or like all these things. So we feel really trapped and we don't really know who to talk to or where to go about that. And that can feel lonely, and that can feel unsupported. And by the way, that can feel wrong. What am I complaining about? What do I want to change when so many people would trade places with me? And I have nothing to complain about overall. So I won't. And by the way, who would listen anyway? Or here's what happens all the time also. All the guys do complain to one another. We sit around, we commiserate, we throw it all out on the table, throw down a few drinks, do everything else. You're in your scrubs, I'm in my suit. Okay, the other guys, none of us want to be wearing these things, but it's the roles that we're playing. And then after we've thrown up all over each other, we leave, and tomorrow we get up and do it all over again. And misery loves company. So how do we make the change? We got to bridge that gap, man, between what's possible and what's probable. What we think is holding us back and what's trapping us here. We've got to remove this notion and this belief that we are trapped and that we cannot make change. And we have to be willing to look that we are going to go down into this valley of despair for a little while, this uncertain, strange new area that we haven't been in. But if we are willing to go down into this area, Seth Godin wrote a great book about it called The Dip. If we are willing to go down into this dip, when you're in this dip, you got two choices. You can lean in and come out better the other side, or you can retreat and go right back. I'm not telling you which one is better all the time. I'm saying when you're down there, you got to decide which one is better for you. But if you're willing to do that, you have opportunity and possibility to change your life for the better, and that makes it probable. But you've got to be willing to start with one thing at a time, and you got to be willing to take ownership of it. And I'll touch on consistency for a second, because this comes up a lot. Oh, you're so consistent with your exercising, or you're so consistent. And I know this was a financial, initial question. You're consistent with your finances. And first of all, we're all consistent. A lot of us are consistently smoking, consistently drinking, consistently going to the job that we don't want to, consistently overspending, all this. It's not about consistency. It's about preparation, discipline, and accountability in every one of these categories. And you put finance in there because this started as a finance question. If you're disciplined and you're accountable and you're consistently making smarter financial choices at whatever your income is and from everywhere you are, you have an opportunity to change and transform your life. But if you're consistently overspending, if you're consistently burying your head in the sand, if you're consistently remaining financially illiterate, apply that in any other category too. That's going to get you. And you are going to wake up 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, and you're going to have regret. And like that other quote that Ryan Estes, our good buddy, had said to me, the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Taught me that the only difference is that the pain of discipline weighs ounces while the pain of regret weighs tons. I can't remember whose actual quote it is, but Ryan told me that. And I was like, yeah, man, that one lands.
Yeah, for sure. As we'll skip over the food only because you mentioned that when we talked a little bit about fitness, but I want to dive into this next one. And when I initially thought, I'm like, wow, this actually shows up in Greg's number 6 is this fashion thing. And I didn't really think about it, at first, but as someone who's in the public eye, and when I think about branding, when I think about how you show up in the world, there is an energy that you put out. And there is sort of like this identity that you get to wear, that you get to become which is now why I understand this point so well. Why is fashion such an important aspect of you? And how do you sort of craft the things that you put on so that somebody, because I would probably say most midlife males tend not to think about fashion.
How do you perceive yourself and how do you want to be perceived by others? This isn't about being on the cover of GQ, being a fashion expert. It's really about personal confidence, about identity, how you want to be perceived by others, and how you perceive yourself. Flip that order, how you perceive yourself, and then how you want to be perceived by others, because we can control what we can control, there too. Where do you feel most comfortable and where do you feel most confident? That's what it's about. To me, it helps me perform better. When I put things on my body that I feel good in, I feel like myself in, it gives me energy. It gives me confidence. I can take the stage or walk into that room and I can feel a little bit better. There's a term for it, they call it dopamine dressing. The idea around it is you put certain things on and you feel a certain energy. We've all done it. We put stuff on that fits great. Oh, okay. We put stuff on that feels we put fabrics on, clothing, anything, and you feel a certain way in it. Now, if you don't, if you're somebody, again, that doesn't really care about that or hasn't emphasized that, or quote unquote, it's not that all important to you, if you will, you're also putting that out into the world. You might be perceived that way. It might not, but that's just where also, look, some guys have uniforms now. We're seeing this where guys have really streamlined and they're saying, hey, I've got more of a uniform because I want to take the number of decisions I make down. One less thing I want to think about, overall. But my point is, again, to have a standard. We're coming back to standards. How you want to look, how you want to dress, how you perceive yourself, and how you want to be perceived by others. I'll just say that again. It's really about a standard. So to me, fashion might be an F, but it's really more about style, confidence, identity, being purposeful and intentional in your actions. That dopamine rush of when you take the stage or when I have a coaching call or when I go to the gym even, how I feel when I put on all black Roan apparel and it fits great on there, or if I'm wearing like my 30-year-old Schlotty t-shirt, and old sweats and everything else. When I walk into that gym, which one makes me feel stronger and more powerful? And I'll take it to the next level. Like I take my most important and hardest meetings right after, let's say, my workout. So like intentionality in the standard is get up, get dressed, fuel my body, go through my routine, put on my most badass, this is where I feel my strongest kind of workout outfit, go knock it out. And then boom, before I even change clothes, that's when the hardest meeting of my day is because I'm tough to beat when I've done those things. That's where I bring it in. And I think it's on brand where we talk about, I'll just end on this, quality over quantity. When we look at the standards for myself, when I look at the standards for midlife men and the guys we relate to, we are talking about quality over quantity. Fewer pieces, higher investment pieces, iconic pieces, brand association even. I think it's a powerful package.
As you say that, I think of another F, which is frequency. That energy that you do feel, that you project out there. And what we're starting to understand scientifically, medically now is that frequency, what you feel, you broadcast out into the world. And so you attract people in or out of your life, how they perceive you. But that frequency is also the message that you're giving every single cell in your body. That frequency correlates to changes in your nervous system and your neurochemicals and hormones in your body that actually speak to your cells and drives gene expression. That's super important, which drives us into the next F, which is, I think, a biohack for longevity and living, which is fun.
Yeah. You just nailed it, which is actually right on concept, right on brand, and why we also get along. You take science, data, the fact that you're a physician, as well as a writer, as well as an author, as well as a speaker, and you come and you bring those facts and you bring those studies. I go, bright guy, makes a lot of sense. I get that feeling. So wait, what you're really saying is we attract and repel exactly what we deserve. Okay, I can do something with that. I've felt that frequency in there. Lean into that. And let's help other guys get there. And that's, to me, I think, this really interesting intersection of personal passion and professional expertise. And how do we bring those things together in the most simple, efficient, and effective manner so that guys go, yup, okay, I get that feeling, I get that vibe. And Greg's talking about it, he's felt it. And now it's backed up by what Doc said. Okay, and it's backed up by, okay, that goes in this bucket. That's now relatable, credible, and aspirational. That other thing that didn't pan out, didn't have the substance or the style, that gets eliminated over there. Now you talk about fun, like this is where I light up. This is fun. People ask me what I do for fun. This is what I do for fun. Talking to guys like you, getting a little wiser, sharing experiences, then going out and applying it, paying it forward. Fun was something I thought really long and hard of, and I was advised against including it as one of the 6 F's for middle-aged men by all the marketing experts, if you will, talk about what you throw out, what you keep and throw out. Well, I threw that one out because the truth of the matter is most men are not having that much fun in life. And they're certainly not having that much fun in midlife, which is synonymous with crisis. We did 5 rapid fire questions. It's like if I threw out to you, like, let's do word association, and I go midlife, okay? What's your response? What's the first word that pops into your head?
It used to be doom and gloom.
Okay, 2 words, but that's typically what it is.
Yeah.
Doom, gloom, crisis, redundancy, despair. It's never fun. Greatest time of my life. It's not what it's synonymous with. And that's why we're working so hard to flip the switch on that. So I think fun is imperative. I had a lot of fun, get 20s, 30s, even 40s. The challenge and the problem was I was having a lot of the wrong kinds of fun and not realizing that there were other things that I could still be doing to have fun, that I didn't really outgrow or shouldn't have believed that I was outgrowing or had outgrown them. Look, there was drinking and there was dinner socializing and there was, the other dads at the school that I was supposed to be friends with and inherited. And there was poker night and there was, all these other things. And there were other trips. And there was, where did the sports go? Where did the playing guitar go? Where did the art go? Where did the cooking class go? Where did all these other fun things go that life had just kind of taken over on with our kids, without our kids, around our kids? So I think fun's imperative. And I think, again, we have to schedule our fun and we get to redesign and reevaluate what fun looks like. And I've changed, quite frankly, I've had to change friends over this, change locations and venues in a lot of ways, the types of experiences that I take on, my schedule and calendar. And this happens over time. Over years, I've swapped late nights, alcohol, partying, certain things for earlier mornings, workouts, juice meetups, sweat working versus traditional networking, climb different mountains, taking different kinds of trips, realizing that I'm not alone in this belief that there's a lot of fun to be had out there. And by the way, I'll caveat it with this. I spent a lot of time trying to invite a lot of people to do a lot of fun things with me, things that I thought were fun, that never took me up on it, never came over to work out, never wanted to take that kind of trip or do that kind of thing. And what I realized is they were not necessarily wrong in what they were doing. Maybe they were golfing or they were fishing or they were drinking, each his or her own. I thought I had to convert other people and there was something wrong with me and come have fun with me and my kinds of fun and pushing that boulder uphill. And then I felt like an outlier and I felt like a loser and I felt like I didn't have any friends and nobody wanted to do any of the stuff that I wanted to do. So I either better go back into my midlife misery cave, over here and do what everybody else is doing. Or I went out, got down into that valley of despair, joined this running club, went out and started swimming again, picked up the guitar and went to like a school of rock type place and and guess what? All of a sudden you realize you're not alone. That anything and everything you want in life exists. It's out there. It's being done by other people. You just have to have the courage and the conviction to go out and give it a shot.
Good. Some of my spiritual teachers tell me that the divine child is the God within. And it's that sense of who we are and the things that light us up, the things that bring us joy. Just like my 4-year-old daughter, she's just out there having fun. And we don't pick up depression. We don't pick up anxiety. We don't pick up worry. You know what? No 3 or 4-year-old is anxious or depressed. So there's that aspect of us that just lights us up. And it's these programmings, the ego, the identity that we get, potentially the traumas that we get growing up that puts us in these places where we lose a little bit of fun. And what we thought fun is escaping the anxiety, the impression of not being ourselves. And that actually ages us. And we're actually, finding the epigenetic data that says that being in default mode, being in ego mode, actually ages us and puts us to having disease. And having that fun playing quiets down the default mode network, almost like, these psychedelics people are using to tap them back into their authentic selves and the things that bring them joy. And that increases performance and longevity.
I think it's all incredibly astute, and I think it's really valuable. I think what also comes into play here is connecting all these dots, tying it back together to a lot of what we talked about. You want to have more fun, your defined way of having fun that you're thinking about. But remember, we talked about earlier, you're unhappy with your job, you want to make all this. What if you also started to look at the fact that my job or where I am right now that I'm so-called so upset about and so, wanting to get out of, shifting that mindset to my job actually provides me with the financial ability to go now have the kind of fun that I've defined that I want to have. Meaning you can put these in different orders. If I want to take guitar lessons or I want to take a cooking course to bring some more fun back in my life, can I be grateful for the job and career that I have right at this very moment and say, you know what, maybe my job isn't so great or I'm not seeing it so great because I haven't been using the proceeds of my job to fund and fuel any of my fun or any of those passions that I have. But maybe I'd be a little bit more grateful about my job, my career, and the way that I approach it going in if I actually started to do some of these other things that I've been saying I've wanted to do for years and I haven't been doing them. So we get back to the planning and the diagramming of what this looks like. Back to standards. Maybe I don't have to be the first one in and the last one to leave every day. Maybe I can be the first one in on Monday when I want to set an example or a precedent. But because I'm now 47 years old or 50, I've earned the right to come in a little bit later or leave a little bit earlier these other days. And now I'm going to slot in that book club. Now I'm going to slot in that trainer. Now I'm going to slot in that guitar lesson. And all of a sudden, I'm more productive at work. I'm a little bit happier. I'm a little bit more efficient with my time. But I've scheduled this fun thing in. I've scheduled this family thing in. And I'm committing to that degree of consistency and accountability to treat those things as importantly as a board meeting or as importantly as the hours that I'm required to put in that company. So they're all connected. And that's where I think this gets really interesting and magical. You can compartmentalize them to an extent, but it's like guys that come to me, they have two calendars. What do you mean you have two calendars? You have, oh, I've got my work calendar and my personal calendar. What do you have two calendars? The left hand is not talking to the right. How is that going to work? You have two calendars that are going on, but you got one life. Personally and however, everything in your life, there's only 2 p.m. period of the day. So we've got guys that are separating and trying to compartmentalize things and thinking that they can achieve in all of these areas separately rather than looking at them in the aggregate and going, how am I going to make all these things fit within one cohesive operating system? So like the first thing we do with a lot of these guys, we get rid of this separate calendars, these separate agendas, because these standards, even when we set them, have to work together. If my standard is to run the marathon at a 6-minute mile pace, that's my fitness standard. But nowhere in my calendar shows me running 50 miles, a day. How would I ever achieve that standard? I might look and go, my business obligations, my family obligations, all these obligations. Now here's my fitness obligation. Guess what? My standard is 6 minutes a mile is unrealistic for the season of my life I'm in. But you know what's realistic? 9 minutes or 8 minutes. And now I can back into that, the amount of training, the amount of work, the bills, all of the other things that are there. What happens then? You talk about the stress goes down. Okay. The anxiety goes down because now I can see it. I can measure it. I can look at it as a whole and go, all of a sudden, I'm not spinning all these plates, wondering how I'm going to go from here to here and do all these other things. They're in the plan together. And that's fun. Back to what you were asking about. That's where it's fun.
Talking to you is fun, my brother. And I hope people pick up from this conversation that changing and really rebuilding and redefining a next version of you is possible. And with frameworks and systems, and from what you've done is built a community of people where you can have the frequency and understanding and standards of men holding each other to account is so important as well. So before I ask you my very last question, how do people find out more about Midlife Male, hop into the newsletter, and maybe join your community?
Yeah, thank you so much. midlifemale.com. Just go there. You'll get our newsletter every single week. subscribe to it. You'll get my free How to Maximize Midlife guide, which goes into a lot of what we talked about here in really simple, basic operational framework. You can join our inner circle, which is a community of guys like us, and be along for this ride, because what it's really all about is helping men live happier and healthier and wealthier and stronger and longer, all the stuff we're into. So I just love to do is be around guys like you, bring experts in their various fields in onto our calls, write about what's happening in here, share them with other guys, and pay it forward, so that we're all here to help one another. And, that's where this is going. So I'm just grateful for these opportunities to get to have some fun with you, to get to learn from you, to get to share it with other guys and say, okay, find us at Midlife Male, because this is where we're building that movement for guys that want the next phase of life to be their best.
And my very last rapid fire question to you of life, of the 52 years you've experienced thus far, what has been your best medicine?
My wife and my boys. That's what it's all centered around. When they're happy, I'm happy. That's the medicine I take. And when I need to pick me up, when they feel good about me and I feel good about them, that's when I know I'm doing something right.
Beautiful. My brother, thank you for sharing your life, your wisdom, your knowledge with the people on today. It's great to hang out virtually, but I'm even more excited to hang out with you in person. Greg Scheinman, thanks for being on the Thrive State podcast.
Can't wait to see you in person, my friend. I really appreciate everything you're doing. Keep it up. You're inspiring me.
I hope you enjoy that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you have subscribed to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions, where we do breathwork, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle, where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow. Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.